Hello, welcome back to the British Content Channel. Today we are doing the updated solo Eidolon guide. Now it's been a long time, but I think it's due an update. So in today's video we're going to cover as much as possible. We've got contamination wave timing, BS timing, how we do macroless limbs, water shields, as much as possible. I'm also going to cover beginner and advanced builds, as well as some bugs that you will encounter and frequently asked questions. Now of course this has taken a while to make, so remember if you find it useful, like, sub, comment for the algorithm, share it to the Discord servers, help me get the views, you know how it is. As well as that, my Discord server is linked in the description. If you have questions, feel free to join and post them, or you can just DM me, I don't mind. And without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so for solo Eidolons, we use Volt Prime. Volt is useful because the first ability can be paired with Shock Trooper, and that gives us electric on our weapons, and we can combine that to make radiation. And it also provides a huge damage boost based on your frame strength. Volt's second ability is useful because it increases run speed, archwing fly speed, and the time it takes to swap from operator to frame using the melee switch. Volt's electric shield is useful because it doubles all crit damage that goes through it, and of course with the amp we're going to show today, you have over 100% crit chance. That allows us to pretty much one-shot the shield of any of the Eidolons, and it makes it very easy. Volt's fourth ability is actually useless. In a Eidolon scene, you're not going to nuke anything, so it's a waste of time, and that is our free helmet slot. On that we put Eclipse, because Eclipse gives you the damage increase perk during the night time on Cetus, which is really good. And that allows us to one-shot the limbs pretty much every single time. Now for the rest of the build, we're running Triple Umbral, because adaptation is very, very buggy on open world areas, and you will die to a Terrorist. We're using Holster Amp. That can be replaced with many different things. One of them is Corrosive Projection, one of them is Sprint Boost. However, I personally use Holster Amp. Prime Sure-Footed, you don't really need to use Prime Sure-Footed, you could replace this with Power Drift, but I like Prime Sure-Footed. And then Vig Swap just for the damage, and these two are Strength and Duration. You don't need range because you're not buffing anybody. Efficiency, you can use Energy Pads, and Duration and Strength are all you need. Arcane Nullifier is important because you will lose all of your energy to the mag waves without it. And Arcane Rage. Now I use Arcane Rage because it gives you a very consistent one-shot even in those areas where Eclipse's damage bonus is not as good as it should be. Also, today we're going to be full stripping the Eidolon for convenience, so I think Rage just provides some consistency. However, feel free to tweak this build however you may want to. You could replace Rage with Arcane Energize, as you see here, or you could replace this with Power Drift. Your choice. So I'm going to cover the advanced weapons first. Both of these weapons require a Riven, and then I'll do the more beginner Rivenless stuff. So first of all we have the Zenith. Ignore the fact it's renamed to Tiburon Prime. This is actually a Zenith, and here is the build. So the Riven I have is crit damage multi-shot with a negative. That is the Riven that I recommend. They're about 500 plat, and they're a great investment because they can be used for solo, duo, squads, all the good stuff. So here we are using Amalgam Serration. The sprint speed on Amalgam Serration actually works for Archwing as well. Twitch helps us with the pellet spread on the waters so we can hit the limb more consistently. And this gives us over 100% crit chance. And the rest of it is just generic damage and fire rate mods. If you're struggling to one-shot, you can replace Speed Trigger with Heavy Caliber. However, you are going to have very slow fire rate, so up to you. And the secondary weapon is the Vermisplicer. Here are the parts we're using: Vermisplicer, Splat, and Ramble. And here is the build I'm using. So for the Riven, you can use pretty much anything like crit damage, crit damage multi-shot, crit damage, fire rate, anything just generally with damage and crit damage on it works really well. And it's pretty much the same build as the Knell Prime. The Knell Prime still works, and here is the build I'm using for the Knell Prime. However, after the recent update, it seems to be failing to proc the headshot thing very often, so I've switched to using the Vermisplicer. And then for the melee weapon, we have the Vastilock. All you really need on the Vastilock is Shattering Impact and a bunch of attack speed mods. Shattering Impact can be max rank or rank 3, 4, 5, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can use a max rank 1 if you want, as we're going to be full stripping the Eidolon anyway. Now, if you don't have the Zenith, you don't have Rivens, any of that stuff, you can use the Rubico Prime instead. Rubico's good because it has 5 bullets, decent fire rate, very high damage. And here's the build you're going to use. Again, Amalgam Serration for the sprint speed, crit delay so we get over 100% crit chance, and of course, just the rest is for damage. We're not running an electric mod on this build, however, you could replace Hammer Shot if you wanted with Stormbringer. And for our secondary, you can use any beam weapon, the Kuvanukel, the Tenet Cycron, whatever, they all work just fine. Here's just a random build I have thrown on, and all this is going to do is chain from the Terror list, or the Gant list, and kill the voms that spawn underneath. Okay, so now let's move on to the focus and the operator arcanes. So we're going to be using Madurai. Madurai has many useful perks for solo eidolons. One of those is power transfer, contamination wave, void strike, and sling strength. In all the clips you see today, I am going to be using all of the waybounds. However, they're not actually that useful. And for most of these, you don't need them. So these two you don't need, this one you don't really need, you don't need this. This is quite useful. And this is quite useful as well. And then the health regen is quite useful. Other than that, you don't need them. So for the amp we're using Raplac, Propa and Certus, or a 177. So Raplac is from Onco, Certus and Propa are both, I think, rank 3 with Little Duck. We use Raplac because it has a very high crit chance and a decent damage, and it can hit the Eidolon while it's inside the water. We use Propa because it can get over 100% crit chance now, and it has very high damage. And we use Certus Brace as it has the best crit chance of any brace. So these are the arcanes I'm using. You can replace Emergent Savior with Magus Elevate here for extra health regen on your Warframe. However, I personally prefer the extra life on my operator in case I make a mistake. Magus Repair is pretty much crucial because when you cast buffs such as Eclipse, Shock Trooper or Roar, your frame can actually take damage while you are in your operator. So Magus Repair keeps your frame alive while you're breaking shields. And then for the amp arcanes, we have Eternal Onslaught for the crit chance and Eternal Eradicate for the damage. Now, Eternal Eradicate is not necessary. If you don't have the amp adapter, this is the one you would lose. The crit chance arcane, however, is necessary. This pushes Propa over 100% crit chance, and it's definitely worth it. Eternal Eradicate helps us with Propa's fall off, and just generally more damage is good. So now I'm going to cover some stuff on the gear wheel and your companion. So for the companion you want Wyrm, and specifically for the mod Negate. Negate helps you stay alive during the fight, especially during the Hydralisk with all the lightning. Most of these mods aren't necessary. I only really suggest Prime Regen, Negate, and then just generally Vacuum and Health mods. The whole idea is you stop Wyrm from dying all the time. Now for the gear wheel, you're going to need the Archwing Launcher. This is kind of like the important part. I recommend getting these Ancient Healer Spectres. They can be purchased from New Loca, rank 1. They're extremely cheap, but they're extremely useful. Squad Energy Restore Large, of course. Being able to drop energy whenever you need it is very important. And the On-Call Crewmate. The On-Call Crewmate is rank 9, Command Intrinsics, I believe. You don't need the On-Call Crewmate, but it is a nice bit of quality of life to help with lure management on the Terror list. And then finally, ciphers. You don't need ciphers, but being able to hack the lures quickly is very, very nice. For our archering, we're going to be using Itzal today. Itzal has a very high flight speed, as well as the Cosmic Crush that allows us to suck the loot in from the lures. The build I have here, you don't need a really good build on it. I recommend Cold Snap, Hyperion Thrusters. You need Hyperion Thrusters, and that's really it, to be honest. Okay, so before we start, I wanted to add something about the Railjack and Drifter Intrinsics. Okay, so there's a few useful Railjack Intrinsics, and one of them is Piloting, rank 8, Aeronaut. Increase the arching speed by 20%. This applies to every mission, not just Railjack, and it's super useful for the Plains of Eidolon. Another one is rank 8 on Tactical. This is reducing the cooldown for the blink. This one is not necessary, but I do think it's really useful when you're blink hacking lures quickly. And then the final one is rank 9 on Command. This gives you the On-Call Crewmate, which we'll be using for the Terror list to help collect voms. Again, this is not necessary, however it does make a pretty big quality of life improvement, as you don't have to maintain the lures and the voms as much. And for Drifter Intrinsics, rank 9 on Combat, the Muscle Mass. This 25% does apply in the Origin system, and it also applies to the Operator. However, it doesn't really do very much, but it does help you with the Propa's fall-off damage just a little bit. Okay, so let's take a look at how we do shields. So the first thing we have to do is make sure we're holding our melee during this. And that's not a problem, as we proc Arcane Rage with our melee weapon anyway. So once the melee is equipped, swap into our Operator, and we're going to shoot a Propa at the correct time. And now this Propa should explode as the Eidolon shield becomes vulnerable if we timed it correctly. As soon as the Propa explodes, we're going to hold left click and shoot a Raplac. And then once we shoot the Raplac, we're going to press our melee key and switch into our frame. If you hold left click after firing the Raplac, as you're switching into the frame, your primary weapon will shoot the instant you switch, and that allows us to get very quick, clean limb breaks. Make sure your vault speed is active during this, otherwise you will switch too slow. And remember to always shoot through a shield. And there you hear that the Zenith fires, and there is the bullet marks to prove that. Now this is a very weird movement to get used to, and it takes a lot of time to really practice. However, once you get the feeling down, you do eventually get used to it. Now, in areas such as the long spawn, you might be unsure whether this will one-shot, and you can shoot 2 propers instead of just the one, and the second one acts as sort of an insurance. If the first one and the Raplac don't one-shot, the second one surely should. And let's see how that looks. So as soon as the first proper explodes, we switch in, and we shoot the Zenith. So just remember, hold your melee, have your speed active, proper, hold left click, and then press melee. And your primary weapon should fire. So first of all, we're going to take a look at how to do a quick charge. So a quick charge is pretty much for spawning a set of voms, and that allows us to get 2 voms into the lure pretty much instantly. And we're going to be doing east camp. So east camp is, of course, east out of the gate. There is the gate. There is the camp. Now to spawn the set of voms, we're going to use this tree right here. And just go above the tree, just slightly forward, and aim in. Now when aiming in, you should see voms spawn, and there's many different places they can spawn. They can spawn directly on the lure. I'll move my Loc-pin out the way. They can spawn at the back over there. They can spawn behind a van that you can't quite see right now. I'll load it in. There it is. They can spawn over there where those Grenier are. And they can spawn in these trees. What is going on with that? Rarely, they can also spawn over here, but that just means you're too far to the left. So now let's take a look at some examples of these 2 techniques. Okay, so this is the 2+1 method of quick charge, which is where we spawn 2 voms on the camp, and then we collect 1 vom from underneath the terror list. So the first thing we're going to do as soon as we go out of the gate, fly to the east camp and spawn 2 voms. So let's have a look. So we fly to the right, and we stay above the tree, and we see 2 voms spawn at the back. Once we see the vom spawn, we're going to fly in, hack the lure, and use Itzal's 3 to pull the voms towards us. And once the lure sucks the 2 voms up, we can then just fly to the terror list straight away. Make sure you cast all of your buffs and shoot your Zenith disc if you're playing Zenith, and drain out your energy to have the crit chance. We then shoot 2 propers and just Raplac the terror list. And as you can see, the vom will spawn in. We break the limb instantly and harvest the vom, and we now have a charged lure. Okay, so in this second example here, we're going to see a far away TERY spawn. Now that's one of the advantages of 2+1, especially when you're new. It gives you a lot of time to find the terror list and cast all your buffs and get prepared. If you are new to solos, I do suggest 2+1, as it lets you practice the QC, learn the TERY spawns, and get routines for casting your buffs. It's also very consistent, as all you have to do is shoot the terror list as soon as it becomes vulnerable, and you will get a vom to spawn. And as you can see, another vom spawns in, and we do the same again. Okay, so now let's take a look at 2+2. Okay, so now let's move on to 2+2. So 2+2 is different to 2+1, as we spawn 2 sets of voms before we even make it to the terror list, and that allows us to break the first limb of the terror list instantly. 2+2, while it is quicker, is a lot harder, as it requires you to hit the first and second vom cycles perfectly. We also must clear the camp in its entirety, otherwise the second set of voms will not spawn. As you can see, I go back above the tree and I see 2 voms spawn across the lake. Now I just suck them in with Itzal, and then we can fly to the terror list. In this very quick example of 2+2, you see me spawn 2 voms, clear the whole camp, and fly to the other side and get 2 voms again. And that's all 2 plus 2 really is. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at how to do a TERY list. Now, TERY lists are the hardest part of runs, in my opinion, especially as a beginner, because TERY lists have got lure management, buff management, VS timing, contamination wave timing, all packed right at the start of the run, and most of your mistakes are going to come from this. So in this example, I'm using 2 plus 2, so I'm going to have a charged lure as soon as I land at the TERY list. However, we can have a look at 2 plus 1 and how that changes the VS timing. So as soon as you land at the TERY list, we're going to shoot the Zenith disc, strip the EIDOLON, cast our buffs, and place a shield. We then cast VS, and we shoot and break the limb. Now, park the charged lure, cast contamination wave as soon as possible, and get ready for the next limb. We sit in void mode through each of the roars, and we just drain out our energy when we're ready to shoot. As soon as this limb is broken, we have 2 choices. We can either gather 2 lures and then return to the TERY list, or we can gather 1 single lure and return to the TERY list. If you gather 2 lures, you don't have to go anywhere else for the rest of the TERY list. If you gather 1 lure, you'll have to get another lure the next limb. If you're a beginner, I suggest just getting 1 at a time, as of course you might not know the lure spawns or you might struggle with blink hacking. If you're more advanced, you can get 2 lures in the same limb, it really doesn't matter. Make sure all your buffs are active, place a shield, drain your energy, and break the limb. And now because of how we casted VS, for the last limb we're going to have VS available. So I get the lures into a position I know the TERY list is going to fall, and I cast VS and break the limb. So now, because I've got my crewmate set up, he will actually shoot the voms for me, but in this situation he's been a bit weird and sprinting around in circles, so I have to do it myself. So now that the last limb is broken, we're going to go and gather 3 lures. Now I suggest 3 because it's very easy to find and gather if you're a beginner, and it's also very easy to manage. We're not going to have to get any sets of voms from external places like log or mid or anything like that. We can just use the voms that spawn inside the TERY list and inside the Gant list after their last limb. So let's go and gather 3 right now. And we get the last lure. Now we're going to land back at the TERY list. Now follow the lure you got from the quick charge and pull it far away from the other 2 we parked inside the TERY list. We need to stay far away from those lures, otherwise there's a chance the ones we just gathered can steal some of the voms that spawn. If the voms get split between the lures, we're going to have 4 lures with 1 vom and none that are charged, and that basically makes it so that we have to go and find external voms. So I grab that one and I pull all the others far away, and now we're just going to wait, cast our buffs, and chill while we have nothing to do. As soon as he begins to stand up, the voms will spawn and the second lure will charge. As you see, we go inside, follow them both, and get ready to take the cap shot. Once we take the cap shot, shoot as many voms as you see nearby, and we're going to fly to long spawn. So now we're moving on to the section known as waters. Now this is where the eidolon spawns in and it comes out of the water. Now to make our runs as quickly as possible, we want to break the eidolon shield and limb as soon as it spawns in the water, or as quickly as possible. So it's broken down into 4 different spawns. We have close right, close left, mid, and long. Now 3 of those spawns are not a problem, as we can use Raplack, and we can shoot the Raplack at the eidolon as it's inside the water. It will break the shield and we just break the limb. The final spawn, long, is a problem as the eidolon spawns under the ground, and we have to use the proper scaffold to damage the shield. Now the proper scaffold after the TERY update is broken as usual, and something is wrong with the eidolon's hitboxes and we're doing pretty much 0 damage on the waters. Now for the Ganchulist it's not a problem, but for the Hydralist the long spawn is unbearable, and I'm going to show you some clips of how we deal with these different spawns now. Once we land at long spawn, we're going to place a shield here just below this rock, and I'm going to deploy one of the ancient healer spectres. We recast all of our buffs and pick up a shield. This shield we collect is what we're going to use to Raplack the other waters, and it saves us energy. Instead of placing a shield on every spawn, we just carry the shield to whatever spawn we need. We suck the loot up with Itzal and fly to the shrine. Now, when on the shrine, make sure to stay directly above the shrine. As you see here, I'm literally on top of it, and the reason we do that, it stops the lures from teleporting to you, because if they teleport to you in this situation, they're going to block the shrine, so you can't interact with it, and you'll park them, and it will be a complete mess. Once you break the limb, it will teleport away because your lures are parked, and it's very messy. So now we just hold interact, and hover over one of the spawns, drop the shield, and cast VS, and shoot the limb. Now in this example, I actually made a mistake. I forgot to fire the Zenith disc, and you should fire the Zenith disc into the mid spawn when you're flying towards the shrine from long. This same technique can be repeated on pretty much every single one of the Raplack spawns. Once the limb is broken, we're going to strip the Eidolon's armor and cast Contamination Wave as soon as possible. Now, Contamination Wave is a non-refreshable buff, so if you look in the bottom right, you'll see how long you have on the VS timer. Now, you need to recast it 20 seconds after. Once Contamination Wave is active, we can just place a shield, go into void mode, and get ready to shoot. Remember to drain your energy, and we're going to do proper with our Raplack technique. Now 20 seconds later, I recast the Contamination Wave buff, and we get ready to shoot again. Now on this limb we're going to have VS active, so we're going to cast it as soon as the first mag wave hits us, and that allows us to use it for the last limb as well. As the VS buff lasts for 8 seconds, casting it at this time allows us to use it for this limb, but the cooldown starts earlier. As soon as the limb is broken, we're going to recast Contamination Wave, and again get ready to shoot. Remember to drain your energy before each limb. And now as we move on to the last limb, VS will become active just after we shoot the first proper. So we're going to shoot the proper, cast VS, and then fire our Raplack. It's a technique that is quite hard to get used to, but once you get used to the motion, it's very simple. Once the last limb is broken, we have two choices. We either turn all the voms into cores, or we bring the lures in close and shoot them. I often elect to do both of these things, because, you know, why not? Now that we have 3 blue lures, we're going to go and gather 1 extra lure, and it's mathematically impossible for these 2 yellow lures to not be charged as the Gant is standing up, as before he's even fully stood up, there should be 3 voms spawned. When we land back at the Gantualist, make enough room so that all of the voms can teleport to you, and pull them in close to his bum. As he begins to stand up, just shoot each vom individually, and you'll notice your lures should be charged by the time we cap shot. We take the cap shot, finish off the extra voms, and return to long to repeat what we did after the Terrorist. However, this is where things start to get a bit complicated, because the Hydralist long spawn, we don't really know where to one-shot anymore. It's pretty much not possible, and the damage that we do is just so random. The best place we've found to shield is inside this rock. However, it doesn't work consistently, and it sometimes will do 0, sometimes it will do 52k, sometimes it does 12k. It's completely random. So if anyone can find a better method, show it to me. So as always, we cast our buffs, and this is why we have the healer, just because of Hydro Long. Make sure to cast speed, pick up a shield, use Itzal on the loot, and hover above the shrine again. So in this clip, we actually one-shot the Hydralist water, and it's possible to one-shot Hydralist with Raplack as long as you orange crit, which is why it's super important to have the crit chance arcane. So we drop our shield, cast VS, and we one-shot. I press E to switch in, and then I just left-click with the Zenith. Instantly after the water, cast Contamination Wave, and sit in void mode through the roar. We're going to drain out our energy and get ready to shoot. And now we just repeat the same steps we did at Gantualist, so recast Contamination Wave, 20 seconds later. There we go, and drain out your energy. Make sure all your buffs are active, so we need to recast Shock Trooper, Speed and Eclipse, and we cast VS when the first mag wave hits us. Now we need to recast Contamination Wave, place a shield, and sit in Void Mode. Drain out your energy and get ready to shoot. Maintain all your buffs again. And now we're going to have Void Mode for the last limb. So after the first Proper, we're going to cast Void Strike. Bang. And it's as simple as that. So we're going to turn all the Voms into cores, because our lures are actually charged right now. And then we're going to go and gather a lure. So once we come back, we're just going to use Itzal's 3 to pull all of the cores in, make lots of distance so that the lure can teleport to us, and then just put the cores in. We're missing one Vom, which is okay, so we can just pull it in nice and close and wait for him to stand back up again. So now we're going to cast all of our buffs. There we go. And all of our lures are charged. And we can use Void Strike for this, because we're not going to need it later. And there you go. That's GG. So that's a Hydralisk capture. And we just teleport all the loot to the gate. And GG's. So I'm going to leave the full unedited version of this 6x3 as a unlisted video in the description. If you want to watch just like the raw unedited footage, feel free to go and view that. There's no ads on it, so you're all good. Now we're going to move on to a couple of different bits like frequently asked questions and the bugs. So the first frequently asked question is Locpins. Now of course you see I have a million Locpins in this area, and the first one I'm going to cover is the quick charge pin. So I'm not going to give out these pins like by joining people's lobbies and stuff, because if this video gets 2,000 views and 10% of the people ask me, that's kind of a lot of time. So I'm going to show you the distances to the pins and stuff instead. So this is my quick charge pin, and it's above the left tree right here. Inside the pin, it is exactly like 150 meters from the camp, and the reason for that, Voms spawn at about 140 to 150 meters away. So if I have this pin right here, and I do a quick charge out the gate, as soon as I see the pin, I just stop holding W. And usually I'm about 140 meters away, which is perfect for the quick charge, as you can see over there. So the next question to do with the quick charge, I've heard people say before that when they get Voms, the lure doesn't spawn in, and the reason for that is because you blink too early. So you need to pass the spawn trigger for the camp before you blink, otherwise the lure will not show up. So for example, if I did the quick charge from here, I got 2 Voms, and then I just blink instantly, I'm going to blink past the spawn trigger for the camp, and that causes nothing to spawn in. So the next thing is to do with the Voms and the lures again, and it's why the Voms not going in, or why they're disappearing. So if you kill Voms next to a lure before you've hacked the lure just eats them, and they disappear. So if I was to hack this lure right now, it would be 0 out of 3 charges. The 2 that I shot into this lure do not make a difference at all. Now, also, if you shoot both Voms at the exact same time, the lure will not suck both of them up, and it will only suck up one. So, as you can see, it sucks that one up, and now this one is completely broken. So what we have to do is turn it into a core, and put the core in the lure. So especially when using the Zenith, that's something you need to be careful of. The next thing is to do with the QC, of course, as many people question the QC a lot. Now, as you see, I got Voms here, and a lot of people ask me, well, it's just not working, why? Well, there's a lot of different reasons, but sometimes one of them is you literally just don't see the Voms. So there's 2 spawns, one here, and one here, that are extremely hard to see. If you don't see Voms, like instantly, just fly into the camp anyway and check. There's also a spawn right here. Now, if you see kavats on the quick charge, that usually means that you're 1 second too slow, as voms spawn on a 6-second cycle, and the cats spawn on a 7-second cycle. So if you see kavats, you can actually just wait in the exact spot, and then you should get a set of voms spawn afterwards. And that's exactly the same for the 2+2 as well. So if I go right here, and I was to get kavats, like right here or something, if you wait a little bit longer, you should get a set of voms, unless you didn't clear the camp correctly. Now, to get 2+2 to work, you have to clear the camp apart from the turret, but I recommend shooting the turret anyway, because if you don't, it's going to like knock you out of archering all the time, which is really annoying. And then you just fly back to the pin, and stuff spawns over there, as you can see. So you can get stuff to spawn there, there, and there. It's pretty random where they spawn, but most of the time in an actual run you'll get spawns here and here. You can also do 2+2 on the shrine and use this tree here, and sometimes stuff will spawn on the shrine. I don't know exactly how to get this one to work because I just never liked it, but it does exist. So now, of course, questions on underwater pins. So you can see I have Locpins that are under the water, and people always ask me, like, how can I get these? We made these pins just after the release of the Angels of Zariman update, and pretty much back then you could deploy a mech just like under the water like this, and you could just go inside the water. Now that method has been patched literally ages ago, and it's a lot more difficult to get under the water now. And I currently don't know how to do it, so if I could turn these Locpins off to record these videos, I literally would. But I have no way to access them, so they just have to stay on. And it's the same for these pins. I've had these pins since before Angels of the Zariman, and they come from under the map, which again is something I'm not sure how to do anymore. So now on to some Zenith related stuff. So the Zenith disc, if you shoot the Zenith disc and you fly too far away from the Zenith disc, it will go back into auto mode. As you can see right now, I'm now in auto mode. I'm not sure exactly what the range is, but I think it's like 200 to 300 meters or something like that. But if you shoot the disc at long and you fly back to the shrine, you will go back into auto mode because you hit the distance cap. It's proving me to be a liar currently, but it does usually put you in auto mode. So that's why I recommend shooting it at mid, like right here, instead, because that way it reaches long. You can shoot from here, and it reaches on the shrine as well. If you shoot it on the shrine, quite often when you go to long, it sends you back into auto mode as well, so yeah. So the next question is about Knell, and of course I'm not using Knell right now. However, Knell is kind of buggy, so a lot of people ask me, I'm shooting the head, but it's just not proccing, what am I doing wrong? Well, quite often you're not doing anything wrong, and the game just sucks. So Knell after the Deviri update is extremely broken, and that's why I've switched to Vermisplicer instead. It does the exact same thing as Knell, has higher riven disposition, cheaper rivens, and it's not broken. To fix the Knell bug, quite often you need to use like a holster reload, like synth mods or eject magazine I think it's called, and it triggers if you die or at the start of a run, so yeah. So now let's move on to some bugs. So one of the biggest bugs that's happening currently is the terror list does not spawn. And you'll know this because you won't hear any of the terror list like metal sounds, or you don't see the beam or anything like that. And to fix this, what you have to do, abort to the orbiter. The host has to abort to the orbiter, and then you have to go back to Cetus and out the gate again, and that will fix it. If you go back into Cetus, it will not fix it, as it's the same like Plains of Eidolon instance, and that will just continuously like not spawn a terror list. Now I don't actually have any footage of this happening, but it does exist, so be aware. So the next bug is this spawn here for the terror list. Now if you break the limb of this spawn like instantly and you don't let the eidolon move at all, the voms are going to glitch out and the voms cannot spawn inside the terror list. What happens instead? All of the voms spawn here above this tree. Don't know why, no idea why, but yeah, they all spawn inside this tree. Now a lot of people are like, oh, why is this happening? But this happens every time. So if you break the limb, and break every single limb consistently, and it's kind of, there's no movement at all. Sometimes they just spawn in this tree, and I can find a clip of that and put it on the screen. So there's two things you can do to, well, I guess, prevent it. First one is let the Eidolon walk a tiny bit. Like, you're going to lose time, but, you know, you don't have voms spawning in a tree, so whatever. Or the second thing is place an on-call crewmate here, and place your lures in this area. And you can pretty much infinitely charge lures with this bug, because the voms will just spawn forever. So another bug is the lures fly away as soon as you park them, and this is actually caused by moving the moment that you park a lure, or pretty much instantly afterwards. If you park them and, like, for example, go into Archwing and fly away, the lure will just drift off into space, and I can find a clip and put that on the screen now. So every time you park a lure, you should be just a bit cautious to not move instantly and give them a little bit of time. So the next bug is this. Whatever caused it, I don't know. How do you prevent it? I don't know. But it exists, and yeah, I have no idea what this one is, to be honest with you, but it happens, so. Another one of the bugs is that lures don't teleport if you're too close to the Eidolon. This is pretty much because the hitboxes kind of like get in each other's way, and the lures decide, nope, we're not teleporting. So always make distance between you and the Eidolon, especially after the water limbs, and that way the lures will always teleport to you. And honestly, I'm going to leave the bug section there because the list just goes on and on and on. Eidolons is a completely broken game mode, and I think the more that you play them, the more you'll discover that things just don't go the way they should. Now, as I said at the start, with Eidolons, everything comes down to practice. You need to do runs and runs and runs and runs before you can actually get used to the systems you have to follow and get a good 6x3. Now, I hope obviously this has made it easier for you to hunt, and I put a lot of effort into this, so please support me, you know, like, comment, sub, share, all that stuff, you know, help me earn that paper. And yeah, sorry for the inactivity, you know, I was busy with uni assignments and stuff, but I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.